I watched my husband drain our family business, empty our savings, and steal my inheritance, all while smiling. He thought he'd won everything. But what he didn't know was that I'd been planning my comeback for 2 years. When the truth finally came out, he lost it all. And I mean everything. My name doesn't matter anymore. What matters is what I'm about to tell you, the kind of story that makes you question everything you thought you knew about the people closest to you. For 12 years, I was married to a man named Derek. To everyone on the outside, we were the couple people envied. We had built something beautiful together, a thriving event planning and hospitality business that had become the talk of our city, the kind of business that made other entrepreneurs jealous. We had a gorgeous home in the suburbs, 2 incredible kids who were thriving in school, and what I thought was a partnership built on trust and shared dreams. But here's what nobody tells you about perfect lives. They're usually the ones hiding the deepest secrets. I remember the exact moment things started to change. It wasn't dramatic. There was no thunderbolt moment. It was subtle, like water slowly eroding stone. Derek started staying late at the office more often. When he came home, he'd head straight to his study and close the door. At first, I thought it was just a busy season in the business. God knows we'd had plenty of those before. I'd bring him coffee, ask about his day, and he'd give me these vague answers that didn't really say anything at all. Then the decisions started. Little ones at first. He'd make choices about the business without running them by me, changes to our vendor contracts, adjustments to our pricing structure, decisions about which clients we'd take on. These were things we'd always discussed together. We were partners. We built this company from nothing, late nights in our apartment, mapping out ideas on notebook paper while our kids slept. Every decision was ours, both of ours. When I'd ask him why he hadn't mentioned something, he'd get this look on his face, like I'd disappointed him somehow. He'd say things like, "I didn't think you'd understand the bigger picture," or, "Sometimes you need to let the business person handle business decisions." Those words hit harder than I want to admit. I started doubting myself. Maybe I wasn't seeing things clearly. Maybe Derek did understand the financial side better than I did. I let those doubts grow roots in my mind, and I wish I hadn't been so willing to accept them. The financial strangeness came next. I noticed transfers between accounts that seemed off, money moving to places I couldn't quite trace. When I brought our bank statements to Derek, asking for explanations, he'd wave his hand dismissively and say something about business investments or strategic reserves. I pushed back once, just once, and the way he looked at me, it was cold in a way I'd never seen before. Like I was the problem, like my questions were an inconvenience. I realized I was afraid of him, not afraid in the way you're afraid of danger, but afraid of upsetting him, of seeming paranoid, of damaging what I thought we had. So I stopped asking questions. I told myself I was being foolish, that Derek would never hurt me. We loved each other, didn't we? What I didn't understand then was that betrayal doesn't announce itself. It creeps in quietly, wearing the face of someone you love, speaking in a voice that's familiar enough to keep you from running away. Over the next year, Derek systematically removed me from the business, not in any obvious way that would trigger alarms. Instead, he did it like a master surgeon, precise, strategic, and methodical. He started opening business lines of credit without my signature. He transferred major assets into accounts that existed in his name only. He began scheduling meetings with our accountant and lawyer, people I'd known for years, without inviting me. When I finally noticed the extent of what had happened, I felt physically sick. I gathered all the statements I could find, all the documentation, and I confronted him. I remember standing in our kitchen, papers spread across the counter like evidence at a crime scene. My voice was shaking, but I held firm. I asked him what the hell he was doing. Derek sat down at the kitchen table like he had all the time in the world. He looked at me with this expression that was part pity, part condescension, and then he told me the truth, or his version of it. He said he'd been protecting the business. He said that I was not cut out for leadership, and that the company needed a single vision. He told me that I was good at the face of the business part, meeting clients, organizing events, being charming. But the real work, the real strategy, the real thinking, That was all him. He said he'd finally decided to align the ownership with reality. I stood there listening to him dismantle everything we'd built together, watching him rewrite our entire history, and I felt something inside me break. But I also felt something else ignite, fury, not the kind that burns hot and fast, the kind that burns cold and steady. I told him he was wrong. I reminded him of every late night we'd spent building this company from nothing. I reminded him that I'd taken a leave from my family to focus on the business when his father got sick. I reminded him that I had the original contracts, the business license, the initial investment documentation. I had proof that I was a co-founder, not just an employee. His face changed. The pity disappeared, replaced by something harder, something cruel. He looked at me and said, "Good luck proving that in court." That's when I realized my husband had already planned this. He'd been planning it for months, maybe longer. This wasn't a moment of selfishness or a bad decision. This was calculated. This was warfare. 3 days later, Derek's lawyer sent me divorce papers. I'll never forget the feeling of holding those documents. It was like holding my own defeat. The papers laid out his version of reality. Derek was the primary owner and operator of the business. I was listed as an employee and brand consultant. My contributions were minimized, reframed, erased. He offered me a settlement. 20% of what the business was worth. He called it generous. The word made me want to scream. My lawyer, a woman named Catherine, who'd been recommended by a friend, looked at the papers with a grimace. She told me what I already knew but didn't want to hear. Derek had been careful. He'd changed the paperwork gradually over the years. He'd moved things around in ways that were technically legal, even if they were morally corrupt. The evidence of my original ownership was murky because Derek had done such a thorough job of obscuring it. "We can fight this," Catherine said, "but it's going to be expensive, and it's going to take time. And honestly, I won't lie to you, he's got a strong position." The divorce proceedings became a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. Derek's lawyers were aggressive. They portrayed me as someone who'd gotten lucky, who'd married into success, who was now trying to claim credit for someone else's work. They brought in expert witnesses who testified that Derek had been the driving force behind the company's growth. They twisted every email, every meeting note, every decision I'd made into evidence of Derek's true leadership. Meanwhile, Derek played the victim. He told people, mutual friends, family members, anyone who would listen, that I was trying to take him to the cleaners. He said I was being vindictive and unreasonable. He let it slip to the kids that Mommy was being very unfair to Daddy. He was masterful at it, absolutely masterful. My mother called me one afternoon and told me I should just accept the settlement and move on. "Don't destroy yourself fighting him," she said. Even the people who loved me thought I should surrender. The weight of that, knowing that even my own mother doubted me, was crushing. I was sleeping 2 hours a night. I was losing weight. I was terrified about custody because Derek had hired the best family law team money could buy, and they were making me look like an unstable person trying to weaponize the children. The stress was consuming me from the inside out. I remember sitting in Catherine's office one afternoon, looking at the latest court documents and thinking, this is it. I'm going to lose everything. My kids are going to grow up thinking their mother tried to steal from their father, and Derek gets to win. Then Catherine said something that changed everything. "Tell me about the insurance policy." I looked at her like she'd spoken in another language. "What insurance policy?" "The one you took out in the early days of the business. The key person insurance. You did take one out, didn't you? Most smart business partners do." My mind went racing backward through years of memories, and then I remembered. It was in the 3rd year of the business. We'd hit a rough patch. One of our main venues caught fire, an electrical issue, and we lost contracts worth thousands. Derek had gotten seriously ill around the same time, and for a few weeks I thought I might lose him. Everything felt fragile. I'd met with an insurance broker, a woman named Helen who specialized in small business protection. Helen had walked me through various policies, and one of them was key person insurance. The idea was simple. If something happened to Derek, the policy would pay out enough money to stabilize the business and help us transition. I'd never told Derek about it because it seemed unnecessary. We were young, we were healthy, and I didn't want to think about worst-case scenarios. But I'd signed the paperwork, I'd paid the premiums, and I'd kept all the documentation in a safety deposit box at the bank that had my name on it, a box Derek didn't even know existed. When Catherine mentioned the insurance policy, I almost cried. I looked at her and said, "Let me check something." I went to the bank that same afternoon. My hands were literally shaking as I opened that safety deposit box. And there it was, the original insurance policy, documentation of every premium I'd paid, and, most importantly, a detailed rider that had been included with the policy, a rider that outlined my contributions to the business and established me as a key person in the company's structure. The policy had been designed to protect the business in case of Derek's death, but the documentation attached to it proved something even more valuable. It proved that I was considered a critical, irreplaceable part of the business. It proved that I wasn't just a consultant or an employee. It proved that I was a founder. I brought that documentation to Catherine's office, and I watched her read through it. Her expression changed. She started making notes, asking questions, and by the time she finished, she looked up at me with the first real smile I'd seen in months. "This changes everything," she said. Derek's lawyer received Catherine's filing, and I swear I could feel the panic radiating from their office. Within 48 hours, they requested an emergency meeting. Derek's lawyer, a silver-haired man named Patterson who'd seemed so confident before, suddenly wanted to discuss the terms. But Catherine wasn't interested in negotiation. She filed a motion to challenge the entire ownership narrative. She argued that Derek's documentation was incomplete and that the insurance policy documentation proved I was a co-founder, not an employee. She requested a full audit of the company's finances. The court agreed. What happened during that audit was almost poetic. It turns out that when you commit fraud systematically, you leave traces. And Derek, in his arrogance, had been sloppy. The auditors discovered hidden accounts. They found transfers Derek had made to shell companies. They uncovered money he'd siphoned off for personal use, hundreds of thousands of dollars that had nothing to do with business protection or legitimate investments. Derek's lawyer suddenly stopped being aggressive. Suddenly, they wanted to settle. They offered me 50%. I said no. They offered 60%. I said no. Finally, we landed at 85%, with Derek responsible for all my legal fees. He was furious. I watched him during the final court hearing, and I saw something I'd never seen before. I saw him truly afraid. He'd believed he was invulnerable. He'd been so certain that his version of reality would win. And now, sitting there as the judge ruled against him, he finally understood that he wasn't. But the story wasn't over. Because Derek wasn't just losing the business and the money. The audit findings were referred to the district attorney's office. Fraud, embezzlement, financial manipulation. Derek was looking at potential criminal charges. When his lawyer informed him of this development, he finally broke. He called my phone and actually begged me to help him. He said he'd made a mistake. He said he was sorry. He asked if we could work something out. I didn't answer. I just listened to his voice crack and his desperation pour through the phone, and I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no anger, no triumph, just emptiness. I took control of the business the day the final paperwork was signed. The first thing I did was rehire 3 people Derek had fired, people he'd gotten rid of because they questioned his decisions or reminded him of the original vision we'd built together. The business had started to decline under his leadership, slowly bleeding money and losing clients. People could sense the corruption even if they couldn't articulate it. Within 6 months of restructuring the company, returning it to its core values, and focusing on quality over exploitation, we were thriving again. Clients came back. New clients wanted to work with us. The business didn't just recover, it grew beyond what we'd ever achieved before. Derek tried to appeal the court's decision. He tried to convince people that I'd somehow manipulated the insurance documentation, but every expert who looked at it confirmed its legitimacy. Every financial analysis showed the pattern of his fraud. He had no leg to stand on. He eventually accepted a smaller settlement, less than the 85% I'd already been awarded, just to stop the legal proceedings and avoid facing criminal trial. He moved to another state. He tried to rebuild his reputation. As far as I know, he's struggling, and I don't take satisfaction in that. I really don't, because here's what I've learned that nobody tells you: revenge isn't actually sweet. Justice isn't actually satisfying in the way you think it will be. What actually matters is that my children know their mother fought for them. What matters is that I survived something that was designed to destroy me. What matters is that I took control of my own story instead of letting someone else write the ending. So many people have asked me if I hate him. The answer is no. I pity him. I pity someone who had everything: a successful business, a family that loved him, a real partnership with someone who believed in him, and threw it all away for control and ego. I've learned things from this that I wish I could tell every woman out there. Document everything. Keep copies of important documents in places your partner doesn't know about. Understand your finances completely. Never, ever sign something without knowing exactly what it says. Trust your instincts when something feels wrong. And understand that sometimes the people we love most are capable of hurting us in ways we never thought possible. But I've also learned that you're stronger than you think you are. I learned that the right people will believe you, even when the world seems stacked against you. I learned that fighting for yourself isn't selfish. It's survival. And I learned that sometimes when you stand firm in your truth, the universe does have a way of correcting the scales. Derek thought taking everything meant victory. He thought that by controlling the narrative, freezing me out, and stealing what was mine, he would win. But he didn't understand something fundamental. You can't build a victory on lies. You can't sustain success through betrayal. You can't keep someone down who refuses to stay down. The business is thriving now. My kids are doing amazingly well. And me? I'm at peace. Not because Derek lost everything, but because I learned that I didn't need him to lose for me to win. If you made it to the end of this story, I want you to know something. If you're going through something similar right now, there is hope. There is a way forward, and you are so much stronger than you realize. Drop a comment below and tell me what you would have done differently. I read every single comment and I want to hear from you. And if this story resonated with you, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs to hear that their comeback is possible. Someone out there is sitting where I sat, feeling as hopeless as I felt. And maybe your share could change everything for them. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for believing that justice exists. And thank you for reminding me that sometimes the greatest revenge is simply living well.